I'd like to share with you one of my most favourite paintings. It's by, obviously, Vincent van Gogh. It's called The Potato Eaters, and it was painted in 1885. And it was painted at a particular time in his life where his world was turned upside down. You see, Vincent's father was a minister in the Dutch Reformed Church, and Vincent had a real zeal for God, and he wanted to be an evangelist. And he went to Bible college and was given his first church, and it was down in the south of Belgium, and it was working amongst some very poor coal miners and peasants, farmers, and he developed a real affinity, a real love for the poor, for the common person. And during his time as a minister in his first church, there was a famine and people were starving. There wasn't enough food. There wasn't enough money. And so bit by bit, Vincent started stripping the church. He started selling the candlesticks and the tapestries, giving away the communion bread. And very soon, the whole church had been stripped and given to the poor in Belgium. Now, it wasn't long before Vincent's supervisors came down to check on his work. And you can imagine the horror of seeing their beloved church just stripped. Now, what they didn't see was Vincent's zeal, Vincent's heart that he had for the poor. And one of the beauties we have of the life of Vincent is that he wrote to his brother Theo constantly. And we have a legacy of not only Vincent's paintings, but his letters. And he talks about his love of God, his passion for the poor, and this real identification with Jesus and Jesus's care for the poor. And when he was excommunicated from the church, stripped of being a minister, he was at a point of real crisis. And he didn't know what to do with his life. His world was thrown into turmoil. He thought his life was going in one direction. He was going to be a minister. He was going to be an evangelist. And all of a sudden, his whole image of what was ahead of him was shattered. Now, he began by doing something that he loved. He loved to paint. He loved to draw. He wrote to Theo, his brother, who sent him paint, who sent him money and supported him for many years. And Vincent, in return, would write back to Theo and would send his paintings back to Theo. And Theo collected these paintings year after year after year. And sadly, Vincent didn't sell any work. Well, he only sold a couple in his life. But the legacy that he's left behind was he had no idea that he would become such a treasured painter to so many people. Well, this first painting that he did was soon after he was excommunicated. What I find important about this artwork is that he didn't throw off what was dear to him. He didn't throw off what was at his core, and that was his love for people. And he lived with the poor in the area. He lived with the common people. And his first series of paintings he did were of peasants, of poor people, of farmers, of coal miners, of weavers. And this is a painting of a family after a day of hard labour. And they gathered together for a meal. Now, it's called the Potato Eaters because that's all they were eating. That's all the food that was available. And yet in this painting, with this very simple food, there isn't that sense of want. There isn't that sense of lacking. In fact, there's a sense of richness, of humanity, of care, of love, a great sense of calm and quiet. At the end of a long day of hard labour, a loving family comes together. Well, I wonder who you identify with in this painting. Perhaps it's the little girl in the very foreground, in the middle. She's looking and listening, watching her mother and father as they serve out the potatoes, listening to her grandparents as they're serving out the coffee. That you don't get the sense of grumbling of the day, of how hard done by they are, but they're at peace at the end of a long, hard day. And they have peace with one another, peace in one another's company, and a room that's full of the smell of roasted potatoes and freshly brewed strong black coffee. I love the story of Vincent van Gogh. His paintings are a wealth of joy and celebration of life. And I would love you to find time in this moment that we find ourselves in, of great turmoil and chaos, to see if you can celebrate the things that you love, your family, your friends, and come together in peace and in quiet at the end of a very hard day. Thank you.